It makes no sense to describe all cerebral confrontations. They are predetermined only in a probabilistic sense. If you observe a rise in nationalism, a rejection of history, and a note of allegiance to the ideals of other civilizations, for example, as in Kazakhstan, then you already understand that this country is moving full steam ahead towards a military conflict with the center of the region and clearly not in its own interests. At the same time, the formation of regional currencies will take place. The dollar will cease to be the only global reserve currency. The break in economic and trade ties will lead to the retention of only truly important and unnecessary commodity flows, often under the cover of military fleets. The economies of the regions will be largely isolated by 80 to 90%. The economy will increasingly close in on itself. We will produce cars, processors, computers, and food ourselves. CS, which were developed for the world of inclusive capitalism and claim to serve as an analog to global reserve currencies to replace the dollar, will likely remain for future projects but will experience a significant decrease in value and importance. In contrast, digital currencies issued by regional centers will gain momentum, as regional elites will be extremely interested in increasing control over the movement of money and flows of value. According to estimates from a number of experts, the global economy may fall by 40 to 60% in the upcoming crisis cycle. This decline will primarily affect financial and currency markets, where real goods are absent and where financial instruments predominantly circulate, leading to the formation of gigantic bubbles. The distribution of the decline among countries will be uneven. In countries with a predominance of the real economy, the decrease will be less than in countries dominated by the financial sector. In effect, the financial crisis will serve as a mechanism for destroying excess printed money. A significant decline is also likely to be experienced by the real estate market, which has accumulated a substantial portion of the issued funds. Returns will be characterized by the development of the real sector of the economy with a parallel reduction in the share of small and medium-sized businesses due to increased completeness of tax accounting control and compliance with legislation regarding personnel. Large players will be integrated into regional management frameworks, while small players will either be absorbed or pushed into insignificant market areas. As for resources, the most valuable resources of the 21st century will likely be not oil and gas, but land on which food can be grown and clean drinking water. In effect, homegrown the planet already has the status of an epidemic, although no one wants to acknowledge this. The powerful of this world largely do not consider the starving population as full-fledged human beings, and therefore this problem is pushed out of the agenda. Currently, 7 million people are affected by hunger, and this number is only growing. Actually, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is not a UETH, but a management technology for transforming the world from state A to state B, and epidemics, wars, famine, and death are tools used for this transformation. Management concentration centers will strive to ensure that the cost of energy resources in regions is significantly lower than on the periphery. Energy is the foundation of a real production economy. A rise in energy prices is inevitable. Energy will cease to be just a commodity and will become a strategic priority, a treasure of the regions. This is essentially linked to the US strategy aimed at incorporating Greenland, Canada, and several Latin American countries into its region. At the same time, food and drinking water will acquire increasing value. It is important to understand that inclusion in the region does not mean entering the regional center. Inclusion can also occur on a contractual basis while maintaining the status of the country. Technologies will become crucial for the future. Even today, we are witnessing a slowdown in the development of computer technology, which has hit the limits of the existing technological paradigm and requires a transition to a new level, whether it be quantum computing or fundamentally different architectures. Similarly, the development of electric vehicles and neural networks will slow down and require a qualitative technological leap. At the same time, the world will move towards further robotization and the replacement of humans with machines in the manufacturing sector, in the office sector, and, as already mentioned, in the military. Education will increasingly become the responsibility of the individual. and the level of knowledge and demand will deepen long term. Robotization will lead to the release of a significant amount of personnel, an increase in unemployment, and, consequently, the need to support this population at least at a minimal level. After will be specialists working at the intersection of knowledge areas, those who can integrate disparate industry solutions into a single automated or robotic system. These are system architects, integrators, complex solutions engineers, and others, so if you want to achieve something, it is better to obtain several degrees. As they say, you may not need mathematics in life, but you will definitely benefit from the neural connections created during its study. On the other hand, the role of narrowly focused specialists performing routine, monotonous work will decrease and be replaced by robots, including programmers, for whom code is already easily written by neural networks, and only specialists in assembling parts of code into a whole and integration will remain in demand. Professions that cannot be replaced include builders, workers in various specialties, and representatives of the service sector where the human factor and physical presence are critically important. However, office IT solar workers will have it of time. A significant portion of their functions will be automated. Many regions will continue to create a service-oriented human, a kind of zombie biobot whose desires and motivations can be easily controlled through media, digital platforms, and social mechanics. Other regions will implement unconditional income payments to the population is an open question and will depend on the specific civilizational model and its ideology. On one hand, unconditional income could become a tool for managing mass consciousness and compensating for the consequences of robotization. On the other hand, there is alternative experience, such as the experience of the Soviet Union utilizing the excess population in production through a system of scientific research institutions, and structures that provide formal employment. How replicable this experience is in new conditions is difficult for me to predict. Not all regions will strive to maintain social security for the population. Some regions, such as Russia, will try to do this based on the ideology and morality inherent in this civilization. Other regions will follow the American insurance model or the Chinese model, where only a privileged part of a society, primarily civil servants, have the right to pensions and social protection. Globalization as a process is objective. The future of planet Earth in the long term lies in the creation of a single race, the race of Earthlings. The question is what ideology will be used to create this race. After the division of the world into regions, a new wave of globalization will begin, already as a confrontation of regions, their ideologies, and the sequential absorption of the weak by the strong. And in the struggle of ideologies, the outline of the future world will be determined. Whether this new wave of globalization will be successful or not is an open question. It will be resolved as a result of the struggle. Everything I have outlined is essentially a very brief description of the likely prospects in a multivariant scenario, which allows us to focus on what to do with our productions and business systems in the future. If you are currently sourcing raw materials from Brazil or surpassing products to China, it is a big question whether you will be able to do the same tomorrow. It is possible that only land routes will be used for supplies to China, and Brazil may become virtually inaccessible. In this case, you will need to switch supply and cooperation chains to equipment and raw materials that are allocated to it in your region and available via land transport. You may need to change the range of products produced to better match the internal market of the region. If you work in the tourism market, the separation of regions will lead to a change in tourist flow directions towards interregional tourism with a gradual decrease in the share of international tourism. This will be facilitated by local military operations, movement restrictions, and increasing risks, which we are already observing, for example, in the countries of the Persian Gulf and adjacent regions. If you work in the financial, currency, and cryptocurrency markets, it is likely predetermined that you are facing tough times ahead, and it may be worth considering acquiring assets in the real sector of the economy. All this is not easy, will be no return to the old ways. As Heraclitus said in ancient Greek philosophy, you cannot step into the same river twice. What is happening now is a shock for many, but the worst is yet to come. Because the end of the era of liberal globalization will be accompanied by a change in ideologies and worldviews, and for ardent supporters of the feeding ideology, this will be a heavy psychological blow accompanied by a depression. Some elites, in order not to lose their status, will be ready to pressure destroy their countries and peoples, as we see in the case of former Ukraine, and this example will not be the only one. From the perspective of governance, this is a normal historical process of changing systems. Peace to you at home, and until we meet again.